gentlemen, twice in the last 100 years, Britain led the way when freedom and democracy were threatened by powers overseas trying to control and dominate Europe. Thankfully, our forefathers chose to do what was right and not what was easy. Will the British people today rise to the same challenge? Do we believe in Britain as much as our parents did? This is the most critical national conversation we will have in a generation, and that same determination and courage will be needed if we are to win our freedom. The questions we need to ask ourselves are, is there anything the EU decides for us that we could not better decide for ourselves in Westminster or Holyrood? Will the remaining EU nations trade freely with us, or will they start a trade war? Should Britain be a free, independent, sovereign nation once more? Are the British people good enough to decide their own future and write their own laws? The UK may be small, but we're a powerful and influential country, and very powerful on the world stage. Other countries do listen to us, do pay attention to us, and will trade with us, whether we're in the EU or not. The World Trade Organization and the Lisbon Treaty will ensure that. To put it simply, we want to take back control of our country from the unaccountable, unelected bureaucrats of Brussels. There is no reform of the EU that would give back the UK the supremacy of our Parliament, our courts, and control of our own borders. The whole purpose and design of the EU is that no country be left with sovereign power. Stripping powers from nation states is what the European Union set out to do and is doing even unto this day. Because we believe in Britain, those of us wishing to leave the EU have been unfairly and misleadingly labelled as anti-Europe. We're nothing of the sort. We're anti-EU, but not anti-Europe. We're not anti-Europe, but we are firmly opposed to Britain's political integration into the United States of Europe. Back in 1973, I was talking to the lady in the back there, she was talking to me about that. Back in 1973, we were told we're joining a common market, and she said she voted for it. But what we actually joined was a multinational political union. This new European state has its own flag, national anthem, it's got its own parliament, civil bank, courts of justice, a vast civil service, and now a fledgling army. And also Europol, a European-wide police force, which I find particularly frightening. And I think one of the reasons that the SNP have merged all the Scottish police forces into one to make it easier to assimilate it into a European superstate. The SNP forever say that they're a party of independence. They're nothing of the sort. They're a pro-Europe party. They are a European federalist party. They are a party that does not want independence of Scotland. It wants Scotland to be ruled by Brussels and Frankfurt and not London. They are an anti-English party. Thus, that and no more. If we vote yes to remain in, then the EU will take that to mean that we accept all of those things, and they will go full speed ahead. The tentacles of the EU stretch into almost every area of our national life. The EU has complete control over British financial services, fishing, farming, I see a farmer at the back there, with the black eye, fishing, farming, energy. Well, we'll see what's happened with energy. Too high a price for Scottish energy, and ends up the steel mills closed. And trade. It dictates UK business and employment legislation, as well as immigration rules. On these and many other issues, our elected Westminster politicians are effectively impotent. They pretend to have power and influence, they strut about, but they actually have very little indeed. if any. It is an out-of-sight, unaccountable European elite which has the final say, and they do not consider Britain's best interests first. After all, they have 28 other nations to consider. Whilst our politicians act out a pantomime in Westminster, the EU bureaucrats have slowly but surely been taking control of our nation, one directive at a time. The European Parliament is no safeguard either. By the way, it is a sham of a democracy. I know, I sit in it. We have no power to stop it, to initiate legislation. We can only slow it down or try to halt it. But that's very difficult because there's an inbuilt majority which is pro-European there and are more interested in the European Union than they are in individual states. And they're only interested in feather bedding their own nests as MEPs and European legislators. There's a thin veneer, the European Parliament's a thin veneer to appease citizens. But it's the only legislature in the world where the members are not allowed to propose primary legislation. They can only vote on decisions made by unelected commissioners, and even then the vote can be, and often is, ignored. We have nothing to lose and everything to gain by leaving the European Union. Despite the fact we're the 6th largest economy and the 7th largest manufacturing nation in the world, we will never again make our own trade deal with any other nation unless we leave the EU. For example, the EU have been negotiating in secret a trade deal with the USA, I'm sure many of you have heard of it, called TTIP, that directly threatens our NHS. Now I don't know about you, but I'm getting a bit old these days, bits are starting to drop off, and I very much treasure our NHS, and I want nothing that will threaten it. But this TTIP threatens that, because it allows American corporations to sue the British government if we don't take whatever medical equipment or whatever that they want to push on us. We in the UKIP are leading the charge to stop this deal being imposed on the British people. We've been fighting tooth and nail in the European Parliament to stop it, and we nearly did stop it. We were 2 votes short. Who were those 2 voters? The 2 SNP MEPs who didn't turn up on the day. So it just shows where their loyalty lies. It lies with the European Union and not with the Scottish people. We will never control our own borders nor manage immigration. What kind of country does not even manage its own borders? Are we a free country if we cannot decide who lives here? We only have to look at what's happening in Paris to see what happens when things run out of control. We must be able to control our frontiers and our borders to know who is coming into our country, who is staying here. And this is not a matter of immigrants. If I were an immigrant, I would come to Britain. Who in their right mind would not? But it's a question of our ability. How many people can we take? How many people can our health service support? How many houses can we build? And how much, by having a large open door European immigration, what prices are houses going to run to? Rents, mortgages, it's too much. We need to think of the people who live here first, and people, regardless if they're the newfound immigrants who've just come here recently, to people who have been here and their families forever. They all think the same thing. We have got to protect our services, and that is more important than anything else. The EU's plans for tax harmonisations come to fruition. We will soon not even be able to set our own taxes, and I find that frightening. Now, I don't approve of Labour Party's taxes or the SNP's taxes, but quite frankly, I'd rather they were set in Holyrood and Westminster by my political opponents than set in Frankfurt and Brussels by people who are not part of this country. So I think that is incredibly important. What else is coming down the tracks? Well, if we don't say no to the European Union, the next thing we'll be getting is the euro. And it's been a complete disaster for the European Union. The southern countries of southern Europe are bust. France is on the point of going bust as well, all because of this euro. It was never an economic currency. It was always a political currency. It was a way of pushing Europe together by force, whether people liked it or not. And it's been catastrophic, and it's something we cannot have. The Lisbon Treaty Gordon Brown signed states clearly the currency of the EU is the euro. No mention of pounds or krona. A British exit from the EU, widely known as a Brexit, is the only choice open to us if we are to make our own laws and control our own destiny. Unless we leave, our democracy, our lawmaking powers, our sovereignty will continue to be sliced away by the EU. Genuine reform is impossible. Don't believe all that nonsense. The Cameron standing on the steps of the aircraft like Neville Chamberlain with his worthless piece of paper. It's nonsense. He hasn't asked for anything. He's basically demanding a tiny, tiny fig leaf to cover his enormous embarrassment. But quite frankly, he's not asking for anything that is going to change the nature of the EU itself. And he won't get anything, because 27 other countries are going to say no. The Slovakian Prime Minister has already said no to any difference between what they're going to pay or what social money is going to be given to his citizens while working in the UK. And the Polish Foreign Minister, new Polish Foreign Minister, has said exactly the same thing. I am not even going to try to pronounce his name. It's totally beyond me, but let's put it this way, there's a lot of Z's in there somewhere. Successive EU presidents, senior officials, European Prime Ministers have consistently confirmed that there's no hope of Britain renegotiating any opt-outs or special treatment. As far as our influence goes, past experience shows we have very little anyway. As the European Union has expanded, our share of the Council of Ministers, the European Parliament and the European Commission has declined to the point where it is almost insignificant. We're being flushed out, basically. Too many other people. The more people join, the less our influence is. So we have to have other people making decisions about our laws. I like the position we used to have, where we can get our government with the scruff of the neck once every 5 years or so and chuck them out if we don't like them. That's what we want back again. It's very important. We in the Out campaign believe the best people to govern Britain are the British people, not a group of foreign politicians or bureaucrats. In the TV debates of 2014, the Deputy Prime Minister, we remember him, Nick Clegg, no Cleggers, was challenged by Nigel Farage. You don't think we're good enough, do you? Mr. Clegg's only response was to pull a face, look down, shaking his head. He gave no defence of the British people, of our character and of our abilities. 40 years ago, when the world war still in recent memory, power cuts, I remember some of you will remember that, some of the old people here, and the constant strikes, the idea of a free and open market might have looked good. It might look an attractive solution to many of Britain's problems. It seemed to be the progressive argument, as they keep on saying, and appeared to be the answer to our economic malaise. But that is not the EU we live in today. We were told it was just a matter of countries cooperating and trading together, and short a common market. That is exactly what we in the Out campaign want. Free, self-governing nations making their own laws and being governed by their own democratically elected governments. Trading and being friends with our neighbours. That is what Brexit is all about. Our right to govern ourselves. We used to call it democracy. Democracy is when people vote for politicians who go to Parliament and make the laws by which we live. And if we don't like the laws they make, we can vote for another government who will have the ability to change or remove those laws. Viviane Reding, you may not know who she is, but she was the former Vice President of the European Commission, which she was very important, and she was ruling this country for many years. You may not have known about it, she was. Anyway, Viviane Reding, the former Vice President of the European Commission, admitted that 70%, 70% of our laws are made in Brussels by unelected commissioners who meet in secret, who we cannot hold to account or vote out. That is not self-determination, freedom, or democracy. And it is it's what we fought, is not what we fought for in 2 world wars. This is our first chance in over 40 years to change the direction the nation faces. And I hope you will all choose to do that and join us. We want to go to an outward, to a growing and dynamic world, not attached to a sclerotic, dying European dinosaur. We want to be cut away from that. Let's get involved with India, with part of the Commonwealth. Let's get in touch with Australia, all the old Commonwealth who speak our languages. Those are the people we need to do business with, and they are in the dynamic part of the world. The European Union is not dynamic. It's being crushed by institutionalized socialism that's strangling any sort of competitive ideas that anyone could ever have. Inward, we have an ever-declining EU, capable of halting the economic slide into bankruptcy for countries like Greece, Spain and Portugal. An EU has trapped proud nations into a single currency, bringing them down to misery and poverty. An EU that has opened its borders to the largest influx of migrants in living memory, without the ability to house, school, care for them, or even us. An EU that takes no thought for the security of its people. And as ISIS has declared that they are sending jihadi soldiers hidden in amongst the migrants. Well, we've seen what's happened in Paris last night. Absolutely appalling. And believe you me, it will be coming here soon. And you know, Scotland's a great country. All the people who've come to this country, the migrants, we've welcomed them. They have integrated well. We don't have problems in Scotland. I would like to see that continue. But other parties, SNPs, who don't want to encourage lots of people to come without thought of the changes, the problems, the housing, the jobs that entails. It's a sort of, oh, let's just have everybody, but let's not think about it. And that open door European immigration is causing enormous troubles in Britain, and it's coming to Scotland. We have problems in the northeast at the moment with the oil business going into a difficult time. We've got a lot of jobs lost up there, and there are more jobs being lost in Scotland than there are in England. And this is worrying, and we must think of this first. An open door immigration policy will be disastrous for the people of Scotland, their standard of living, the ability to get to see a doctor, to get social housing, to pay for a house, to pay for rent. Because all these new people coming in put a lot of pressure on the infrastructure, and we just simply can't afford it. Iceland is with a population of 330,000 people, has a trade deal with China. The EU doesn't. So Britain misses out, as we are not allowed to create our own deals with countries around the world. If Iceland can negotiate a trade deal with the US and China, why can't we? We'd be better at it. It would be tailored towards what people in Great Britain want, not what people in Romania or Bulgaria or wherever want, or Hungary. It's what suits Britain. And since we have all established alliances with these countries, we do a better job of them than the EU could ever do. Free from the EU, Britain could once again re-engage with the Commonwealth, as I said before. People who speak our language, have the same system of justice, and actually want to be our friends. This opportunity will not come again, so we must not allow ourselves to be fooled as in 1975 when Harold Wilson conned the British people. We know we were conned because we no longer live in a trading bloc of individual nations, but a United States of Europe speeding towards an ever closer union. despite what Mr. Cameron got in his little deal, waving his little piece of paper on the steps of the aircraft, a la Mr. Chamberlain. We must send a message that cannot be ignored, and we have a way to do just that by voting to leave the EU. This is our country. We developed a parliamentary democracy and exported it and the rule of law around the world. Our forebears knew how to govern themselves, so can we. Let's take back control of the country. Let's have a proper immigration policy like Australia, Canada, New Zealand. Let's stop giving away 55 million a day to the EU. Let's re-embrace the wider world and not just the EU. Let's strike trade deals with emerging powerhouses like India, China, and everywhere else. Let's be an example to the rest of Europe and show once more what it means to be a free, independent, and prosperous nation. I'm sure by that example we'll encourage them to join us in the free world. No one knows Britain better than the British. We believe in Britain, and we want our country back. I am very conscious of the fact that the many people who voted for me in the election were Scottish nationalists. In the European election, that was. They came up to me and said, "Don't tell anybody, I'm voting for you." I said, "Oh, and you're Scottish national, well, that's strange, why is that?" And they said, "Well, it's because something very simple. We want an independent Scotland, but we don't want one that's ruled by the European Union." To them, that was worse than the option of London, because they felt that these people were foreign, they were distant, they didn't understand our ways, and what is the difference between having a United Kingdom and having a parliament in London and in Holyrood and having one in Brussels? What's the difference? It can only be dislike of the English. I can see no other reason for it. And that is not good enough. We need to have a country that's together, works together. The Scottish Nationalists are not offering independence, only UKIP is offering independence. We are the only party that wants Scotland to be free and within the United Kingdom, with decisions made in Westminster and Brussels. One other thought, just to end, that's quite important. Even if every MEP in the European Parliament voted together, this would only constitute over 8% of the total vote. So every British MEP in the European Union, in the European Parliament, it would be 8% of the total vote. If Turkey and Ukraine join the EU, it will shrink even further. We can vote no to proposals as often as we like, but unless other countries agree, the measures will become British law anyway. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like you all to tell your friends, your enemies, anybody you like, that we should all join together to get out of the EU, regardless of your political position, even if you're the SNP or whatever. If you want a free Scotland, free of a bureaucratic dictatorship in Brussels, which tells everybody what to do, the parliaments, both in Holyrood and Westminster, are a pantomime. No matter what Sturgeon tells you, no matter what Cameron tells you, they actually do nothing. They obtain their salaries by deception because they are not working for them. 70% of the laws are made in Brussels. And I'm not even making those laws as an MEP. They are being made by an unelected, secretive bureaucracy that nobody knows about. I don't know what you'd call it. It's like the Politburo. It's like communism. It's not something we want. And let's have some freedom. Let's make our own decisions. We are more capable than anybody else to do. Now, if anyone would like to ask any questions, I'll answer anything you like. Or my colleague and R.O. Kevin Newton will also be happy to help. He's good on some of the technical issues, especially if it's mathematics or not.
Cost us to leave it?
It won't cost us anything. It'll save us money. 55 million a day, just by getting out.
No, just a question to Radio 4 about talking about all these different things.
Cost, yeah, but the scaremongers, well, the SNP talked a bit about that during the referendum. The scaremongers say, oh yes, it's going to cost you a lot of money. No, it's not. We are net contributors to the EU. We put more in than we get out.
Oh, I know that.
Britain and Germany are keeping the whole thing afloat. Now the farmers worry, what happens if we leave? What happens to our single farm payment? They're going to get it, exactly as they got it before. Very simply, because we're cutting out the middleman. Instead of sending the money to Brussels, and the Germans sending the money to Brussels, and then it gets spread out all over Europe, we'll just simply give it our money to our farmers. So they'll probably even get more money if it's required. So it's a win-win situation. And the European Union, they're not going to have a trade war with us because they sell us more than we sell them. They'd be insane. And they can't do it anyway because the World Trade Organization, this organization, the EU, was set up in the 50s. It's a solution to a 50s problem of world trade, or European trade. And that is no longer necessary because we have the World Trade Organization. 1995 was signed also to document to state that all the tariffs were reduced, so they cannot impose tariffs on us. So, and they can either work with us or not work with us. Well, that'd be very silly. They want to sell their champagne and their Mercedes to us just as much as we want to sell stuff to them. And since they sell more of their stuff to us than we sell to them, it's very much more in their interest to do trade with us. So that's never going to be a problem. So.
Yeah, a few issues. Well, not issues, I've got one big question. But first of all, I'd like to say about all this referendum we had about Scotland and independence. Yes. And all this. I'm a great believer in the United Kingdom, I really am. I believe there's 4 cultures in this land. There's the Scottish, there's the Irish, there's the Welsh, and there's the English. And I think there's times when we all might get up each other's noses, but we work well together. We have done for many, many years. We're 4 different peoples in one land, and I think if we stay together in this, then we can benefit one another a great deal. Tearing people apart, tearing lands apart, is the quickest way to diminish them, to make them smaller, to make the voice even less. There's an old, I've read Sun Tzu, the Art of War, and one of the things in Sun Tzu is you divide and conquer. And when we're divided, we are weak. Another point I want to make out is in our nation, in England, we're going through some very trying times. Manufacturing for many, many years has been on the decrease. Employment has been going down, except for employment in service sectors and that sort of thing. That is on the increase. But employment in manufacturing has actually been on the decrease in all of our nations for many, many years. And I think that's part and parcel of being part of Europe. With all the legislation that's coming out, it's actually destroying our manufacturing capability. We have got, amongst our nations, we have got a massive basis of great manufacturing, great inventions, great ways of doing things. But we are not utilising that. We're not being allowed to utilise that to its fullest potential. Out of Europe, we will be able to. But I see one problem coming out of Europe. Looking at the Greek situation and the Syriza party, they come to power on a mandate of coming out of the Eurozone and no austerity, etc., etc., etc. But the Syriza party were basically, they were threatened and they were cajoled into accepting the new bailout terms. And they were threatened with the whole banking system shutting down on them.
As with the Irish.
Yes, absolutely.
Draghi, his predecessor, threatened the European Central Bank, threatened the Irish government that if they did not load the debt of the French and German banks onto the Irish citizens, that they would destroy the Irish economy.
Yes, exactly.
And both Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael went along with that.
Yeah. But that's
I've been fighting with a guy called Mick Flanagan, who's an independent in the European Parliament, he's from the Irish Republic. Okay. And not someone you'd think we'd normally UKIP would get on with, but we do. And he and I have been fighting this, and we're trying to drag Draghi, the chairman of the European Central Bank, before the Irish Parliamentary Commission. He won't go.
No, it wouldn't.
Now this man is a servant of all the peoples of Europe. He's a bureaucrat.
Yeah.
And if he cannot be dragged before a committee of the sovereign parliament of the European Union, what is the point of the European Union?
Well, the whole thing is they're not
They're a law unto themselves.
Yeah, they're not servants of the European Union at all.
No.
They're masters of the European
And do you know,
Union.
I'll just tell you something else very interesting, that because of that, the Irish citizen per head of population has more debt on their head than each German citizen after the Treaty of Versailles 1919.
Yeah. And that leads me directly to my question, is how are we going to overcome that and take control back of the banking systems where Europe can't control our economy like they did in Greece and in Ireland, which they're going to do in Portugal with this new turnaround.
Fortunately, there was, I think the best way of describing it is there was a bit of a bitch fest between Tony Blair and Gordon Brown.
Right.
I don't think it was because Gordon Brown particularly didn't believe in the euro, or Tony Blair particularly believed in the euro, but because Tony Blair was in favour of going to the euro, Gordon Brown was automatically opposed and thought tooth and nail to keep us out. He didn't do it for any altruistic or probably good reason. This is the man that sold gold off at the bottom of the market and told the market a week beforehand he was going to do it. He no master of economics. He kept us out of the euro. The only good thing I could ever say for Gordon Brown, and that was only because he was having a fight with Tony Blair.
Yeah.
So, if we'd been in the euro, we'd been the same mess as the rest of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fortunately, we're not, so our growth has gone up. Well, it has in England, but not so much here. The growth has gone up, but not in the rest of Europe. The euro has been an absolute death sentence for European economies. It's destroying them all. And quite frankly, we are best out of it. Thank God we are, and we're only out by accident.
Yeah.
But that's meant we're not such a mess. But if we vote to stay within the European Union, the European bureaucrats will take that as a green light to go for bust, merging all the European economies, tax across Europe all the same, corporation tax Europe across the same, everything across Europe all the same. It will destroy Europe. The whole thing will implode. And it's already happening. But we will be dragged. It's like getting towards the event horizon of a black hole. We will be dragged towards that event horizon.
Absolutely.
So, quite frankly, we need to get out.
Absolutely.
Now, there's no economic argument for staying in. The large corporations say, okay, companies want to stay in. No, they don't. Large international corporations want to stay in because they want cheap slave labour throughout Europe. They can move around the place at will. Small and medium-sized companies based in this country who pay their taxes, play by the rules, they do not want to be part of the European Union. They want to be out of it. So, there lies no argument whatsoever. Now, there will be a period of time between us leaving and setting up our own rules. Will there be interim arrangements? We'll have to, it's not going to happen overnight.
No.
But once we vote for it, we've voted for it, we're on the road. And that's what we must do. But we must get on that road because there is no way we can change the EU. Even Cameron's going there, he's begging for tidbits from the table.
Well, listen,
please give me a
correct.
crumb, Madam Merkel, because he knows he's going to get nothing. And that is outrageous. We've just simply got to get out. There's no, even he knows there's no possibility. Darren.
Yeah, I just want to add one point to that. Going back to your point about why wouldn't they be able to do the same to us as they've done to Ireland and Greece? Well, one of the things, and David touched on it, is that we're not part of the euro. So they don't have the same degree of control over our economy. It's not governed by the European Central Bank. Obviously, if your central bank is based in Brussels, then they can do whatever they like to. But we still have the City of London, we've still got the Bank of England. So we've got far more control over our economy.
But aren't they though still they're now private institutions? They're not controlled by our governments per se anymore, are they?
They're controlled by the European Union.
Well, no, the Bank of
Well,
England.
allegedly not, but in fact, yes. It's part of the European secret bureaucracy that governs the whole thing. They're the ones that deal with it.
But as soon as we voted to get out, that would change and it would become ours again.
Right.
I'll tell you something else.
We're not trying to untangle
we
ourselves
vote
from
for
the
the
economic
ones
system.
There'll be a gathering rush to join us. I think you'll start seeing the Dutch, the Danes probably, the Swedes. You'll see a lot. Sweden's just closed its borders last week.
Yeah.
You know, they are getting very upset about it. Our sister party, UKIP sister party in the EFDD group, is the Swedish Democrats. They, I think, are on the brink of forming government. They were like UKIP until a year or two ago, and they have gradually. Peter Lundgren, who's a fabulous guy, used to be a truck driver, one of the most erudite men I've ever heard, one of the best public speakers. He came over here and spoke in Scotland. I had him speaking in Edinburgh. He's been saying that they're now on the brink of looking as if they're going to become a party of government. Now that is a big change in Sweden. It used to be all cuddly, all fluffy, all friendly, but the problems of open door immigration have just caused so many problems in Sweden that they are now they're thinking again. And I think everybody's looking towards Britain. If we can achieve Brexit, we won't be the only one though. You might find there'll be a few other people joining. There might well be a Grexit to join us. And the only way that Greece can solve its problems, quite frankly, is to leave the European Union. Yeah. Otherwise, they'll be indentured slaves for eternity.
Well,
the only thing they do is go out, go bust, and start again.
Yeah.
And that's all thanks to the European Union. So, I can't tell you more than that, but I think what you said made a lot of sense, and I think that's it. Now, does anyone else like to say anything? So.
Yeah, could you explain to me in simple terms the VAT regulations that apply?
In simple terms?
In as much as having been in business, I was under the impression that VAT was a European
it's a European
thing to do with
position.
Britain, but we had to agree to it, and that we could not reduce the rate of VAT. We could increase it, but we weren't allowed to reduce it.
We've got to get control of this ourselves, and it's true, they control to a degree what goes on with our taxation system. And we cannot have a system whereby foreign governments are telling us what to do with our taxes. We must leave, because it doesn't suit us. It really doesn't suit us. We must do what's it. For example, in the UK, we do not charge VAT on books, because we hold learning in great stores. And we don't charge VAT on, I don't know all the exemptions, don't ask me all the food, yes, I'm sorry, it's food and VAT and children's clothing, what's the other one? Well, I've already mentioned books, children's clothing, the various exemptions that we consider important. But, and also, I'd like to see historic buildings exempted completely from that as well. To repair historic buildings, or whatever, that's another thing. We need to control ourselves, as simple as that. And business would value that, very much so. And because they can get a hold of their MP by the scruff of the neck and say, look, chap, sort this out, or you're out at the next election. You can't do that, they haven't even grabbed me by the neck, and I can say, I can't do anything about it. There's nothing I can do. I can make a noise, but that's it.
I mean, I'm old enough to remember the thing called the European Free Trade setup, which was European countries that had got together and agreed tariff rates, etc., etc.
Yes.
So, who was behind and what was the concept of the European community? Was it Germany?
It was basically, it started the coal and steel agreement between Germany and France. Basically, Adenauer and he's all over every building in Brussels, I can't remember. But they set it up, Adenauer and what's the German chap? I can't remember his name, sorry. And I don't know, what's the German? It was the French one. I can't remember. Anyway, they set up this coal and steel community, and it was all about stopping wars between France and Germany. So France and Germany would never go to war because the economic levers, coal and steel, were under sort of mutual control, and there wasn't going to be another war. But that's not what stopped wars in Europe in the last, since the last war. It was NATO, which France was not a member of until very, very recently. So NATO stopped the Russians. And there was no chance of France and Germany ever going to war against it. Simply neither had an army worth, well, the Germans didn't have an army worth calling an army that was going to be able to do much about it. So there was no taste or desire for war. So NATO was the thing that stopped wars. But you've got museums in Brussels devoted to a false history, which you can't believe they call World War II as the European Civil War. I mean, it's a complete fantasy. You know, you can't believe it. They make history as they see fit. It all revolves around the European Union. Less of that, but the economic facts of life is VAT should be set in UK by Westminster and Holyrood, not by Brussels. Gentleman in the back. Mr.
Like I
Fowler.
suggest, VAT originally was a French tax, a very clever tax. And what we have to face, Osborne, he wrung his hands and said, sorry folks, we're now harmonised with the rest of Europe. It's a 20%, or as in Denmark, 25% VAT rate. And right now, that is killing small businesses.
Absolutely.
We're just hammered left, right and centre. And what we also have
Having a small business myself, I totally agree
is
with
visiting ourselves. And the other thing is that SNP, basically, we are now a region of the European Union here in Scotland because they never mention the European Union unless they really have to.
you. Yep.
Everything is done by stealth. Why did Kenny McCaskill get the boot? Because by stealth, he was trying to introduce European justice system.
Yes.
And that was one of the examples where we had to lose this 800-year-old law of corroboration.
Yep.
And all our top judges in Scotland said, no, we want it, we must have it. So that's only one example of how SNP...
And merging the police forces.
And now we had a paramilitary police force, there's a public outcry, we don't have policemen carrying guns in this country. So everything is creaking at the we're absolutely creaking under SNP, NHS, Police Scotland, our agriculture, fisheries, for the fishermen, total disaster. Under the new discard rules, by 2020 they'll be closed down. And the way things are going in agriculture, we will be nationalised by what a lot of people think is Scottish law. It's nothing to do with Scottish law. It's all to do with European law, which was drafted in 2003.
70% law is made there. It's not made by Holyrood. And as you're dead right, and as regards fishing, if we got out of the European Union, we would get our 200-mile fishing.
But you have to qualify that statement. You have to renegotiate with the international community.
Yes, but in effect, we get our 200-mile limit back. And if we were determined to have it, we would. But obviously, negotiations involved in these matters. But the thing is, we'd have a 200-mile limit back, which was destroyed by Heath and Ripon, who actually destroyed the fishing industry to get into the EU. And that was something that was absolute disgrace. And they admitted as much.
Well,
So we must get that back, otherwise we're going to have, you know, the black gold of the North Sea is oil. But there's other black gold down there, and that black gold is fishing. Fishing is an enormous industry. The Spanish make a fortune out of it. They come and plunder our waters. We should be bringing the fish, landing them in Scotland. We should have fish processing plants here. We should be turning them into old Mrs. McFadden's Finnan haddies and all that sort of stuff, and exporting them as luxury items and selling them through Harrods and all this sort of stuff. That's what we should be doing, and that gives Scots jobs, especially in rural areas in the Highlands and the East Coast. We want to see jobs brought to Scotland, not handing them over to the Spanish to do it. And I don't blame Spanish. If they can do it, they should. You know, I'd do it if I was Spanish. But the thing is, why do we elect them? And that is not on. We should be making fish is a scarce resource. It's a valuable resource. Any of you have been down a fishmonger of late will be able to tell you that. Or any of you have been a fish and chip shop of late. Fish and chips are not as cheap as it used to be. You know, that is something that is Scotland's gold in the North Sea. Let's get it out. Let's not hand it over to the Spaniards.
but the other aspect is that SNP have already enacted a lot of European, I call them Euro taxes.
Yeah.
Alan Smith gets really annoyed if I say that. Rubbish, it's Scottish law. No, it's Euro taxes And by introducing, or rather cancelling the stamp duty, as for this April passed, I know people who have, if they buy a house for say 350,000, they've got a £7,500, what used to be stamp duty is now a land and transaction tax. We now have the land tax coming on stream as well, and so therefore people, bureaucrats, call them what you like, sitting in Holyrood basically are enacting European law by stealth,
Exactly.
and they're still doing it as we speak. They're doing it, and
as I
the
said,
public hasn't got a clue.
70% laws are made abroad, and I want our freedom back. And I actually find it terrifying because they're now setting up Europol, the police force around Europe. They want a database for everybody. They want us all on their database. They want us all to have a box in our cars so they can tell where you've been, who's there, who's doing what. They want to know everything about us. And that's all part of the Europol legislation. Now, people may tolerate that in Europe. Places that up until not that long ago had the Staatspolizei and the Stasi in East Germany. I mean, I was there, and that wasn't that long ago when I was a kid, when I was a university student, and it was East Germany and Leipzig and places like that. You know, it was equivalent to the Gestapo. It was terrifying. You felt you just felt like Germany before the war. You had that feel about it. These people, the Stasi, were terrifying people. So, you know, there are many people, including the current German Chancellor who came from East Germany, are used to that sort of way of doing things. We are not. You know, I don't want to be the stage where people are asking, like there's the gendarmes doing France, papers, you know, you get your papers out, or you get banged up. I don't want any of that sort of nonsense. So, you know, we want to run things, we want to run it. I want to get back to the days, personally, of having Police Scotland, a bobby with a truncheon, and get rid of all these, you know, Sten guns and God knows what they've got. They're running around with machine guns. I mean, you know, there's not going to be a Jacobite rebellion in Fort William in the near future. So why are they running around with machine guns? It's utterly unnecessary. So let's get back to policing by consent that we always used to have in this country. A bit of Dixon or Dock Green and a little less Starsky and Hutch, you know. So let's have a, that sounds dating here. But, you know, I think we need to go back to the way things used to be, where things were an awful lot better. Anyone else?
What would happen if we did vote and get now I'm all for leaving the EU, by the way,
Yeah.
but the SNP haven't.
Yes, well they
What
would.
would happen in Scotland? You have to leave Scotland?
So, you mean, sorry, well I don't care what anybody thinks, we decided in the never-endum, once, and as far as I'm concerned, and for all, that we were part of the UK.
Yeah, but
That was what was decided.
Not listening to that.
They may not listen, but I think the Scottish people might have to tell them a second time, but whatever. We do not have another referendum, that is it. They don't play fair, but they have to listen to what people want. They are damaging the Scottish economy by continuing this never-endum, because I notice the house prices in Scotland are dropping, people are not investing in Scotland, there's a fear of doing business in Scotland, and it's not good for the Scottish economy, and it's losing jobs for Scotland. At a time when we've already got problems in the northeast with the oil industry, this is adding to these problems, and it shouldn't be. They're doing a lot of damage to this country, and the constant niggling at the English. They are our cousins. When people were being, as George Galloway very appositely put it, when they were shooting down measures which were shooting down Spitfires, they didn't ask if there was a Scotsman or an Englishman flying the plane. So, you know, quite frankly, we fought these people, Napoleonic Wars, the World War I, World War II. I can't answer the Napoleonic Wars, but my grandfather and father fought in those wars, and they're grateful to the English and like the English and consider them to be cousins. And as far as I'm concerned, they're the people in the world that we're most close to, and I don't see any problem with that. I don't know what the SNP or what planet they're on, but whatever planet they're on, it's not the one they want to save. So I'm afraid that we must stick with English. Europe is not our friend, Not that long ago, they were dropping bombs on us, for goodness sake. And I don't know if you're old enough to remember that, but I'm not, I'm afraid, but you know, my father was, and you know, we just don't need that. I think we want to stick with our English chums. I mean, they've stuck with us through thick and thin, and we, you know, I worked in England for 30 years. I worked in London, and nobody ever said anything about me being Scottish. You know, I was accepted. I became the chairman of UKIP in London, elected above all the English people to be the chairman of UKIP in London. Nobody ever said, "Oh, you're Scottish, you shouldn't be doing that." I think it's a damn disgrace that they should do that. And we have so many Scottish people living in England, earning their money in England, and why their lives and businesses should be called into question is a total disgrace. And during the actual referendum itself, they did not consult the army. Any of our soldiers who were stationed abroad did not get the vote. And I'm sure they, 100% to a man, would have voted for the Union. And also, any Scot who was working abroad did not get the vote. If you're working in Saudi Arabia or Canada or somewhere else, you didn't get, or in London, you didn't get the vote. There should be a postal vote for all Scots. And they were happy enough to give it to anybody who arrived in Scotland from the continent or from any other part of the world. Oh, here you are, son. You know, you know, just vote for Scotland's future. But oh, don't care about people who are born and bred here. Nobody cares about that. So, sorry, chum, they would have lost. They would have lost even greater extent. I think it would have been 60-40 or more if the army and Scots abroad had been brought into this. So they're talking nonsense, and the only people who benefits being part of the European Union are the people at the top of the SNP who could strut about with, you know, Ariel Marie and you know, so Angela Merkel at the European Parliament. That's what they want to do. They want to strut the stuff there, and also have a nice retirement with a very fat pension. So I hope that answers your question.
You're an MEP.
I know what I'm talking about. Unfortunately, all my money, Nigel gets all my money.
So what sort of a relationship would you imagine us having with the European Union or Europe if we did pull out?
I think we'd have an even better relationship. And I think what would happen is, I think I don't think the European Union will survive us leaving. I think that as soon as we leave, the rest of it's going to fall to bits. Because it's not in the interest of the Greeks, the Spanish, the Portuguese. The Spanish would be much better off launching off in launching the peseta. The French would be much better off using the franc. The only people who actually benefit from the euro, oddly enough, are the Germans. They benefit greatly because it means they have a cheap currency that helps them to export more stuff. Germany would have a bit of a problem if the euro ceased to be, which is why they're so keen to keep it going. So no, it would be the advantage of Greece. Greece is bust. You know, any of us who've had any financial troubles, I'm sure we've all had those from time to time. You know, and you know, you wonder, oh God, you know, I'm going to be able to pay my bills and stuff. And then those nice lawyering chaps will say, well, the best thing to do is, why don't you go bankrupt, just get rid of it all. And sometimes that is the best policy. Get rid of the debts and start again.
So,
and in Greece's case, it's so indebted up to the eyeballs that they really don't have any other option.
So do you think we'd have the same level of trade with Europe?
I think it would increase in many ways. But I think once we're out of it, I think that we'd have a lot less rules and regulations, and I think a lot of, to be honest with you, I think an awful lot of European business would cite themselves in the UK.
Okay.
And I think you'd find to be an absolute gathering rush of French companies coming to set up in the UK. And there'd be the same with German companies and other companies, because it's a stable platform. I mean, they're not going to go and settle in some country that's a bit wonky or outside Europe, but they will put their money into something stable like the UK, where we have less rules and regulations, less interference in companies' affairs, and lower corporation tax. So of course they come to us. So I reckon it would boom. And you know, why would they have a trade war? They can't. They can't afford to have one because they will bust. They've got to sell rental cars to us, not that they'll ever buy one.
So there's no possibility of sabotaging the exit.
Oh, sabotage is a two-way street, isn't it? You know, they can sabotage us, we can do the same. Well, no, because why would they? The companies would allow it. The corporation are going and knocking on the door, President Hollande saying, what are you doing? We want to sell champagne to these people. We want to sell our garlic pate to these characters. You know, we want to sell all sorts of guff to them, Renault cars that nobody wants to buy. You know, why should we not do that? And France can't afford it. France is already on the rocks. That would pancake them altogether. And there are many voices in France. Many of them have spoken to. Some of them are rather unsavory, such as Madame Le Pen, but you know, they are starting to talk a different way of doing things. And the way things are going in France, who knows what's going to happen there? It's going to be uncertain and unusual outcomes. President Sarkozy, ex-President Sarkozy's getting ready for the next run. But there's going to be all sorts of folk running in France. It's going to be colourful, shall we say. And I think that there's no appetite in France for change. Certainly no appetite with the Germans at all. And other countries, Dutch, what are they going to do? Dutch, they're going to send a navy up the Thames? I don't think so. Luxembourg, are they going to have an airdrop in London to take over? I don't think so. So, you know, basically nobody's going to bother us.
Yeah, I mean, actually, talking about the same thing, with all these sanctions against Russia, it's actually shooting Europe itself in foot.
Yeah.
Because Germany, France, Spain, Greece, they're sort of, I think they're exporters to Russia.
Yeah.
But because now Russia is fighting back with their own sanctions against Europe, Germany's not selling the cars, France is not selling the cars. Now you look at the businesses, they're all starting to go against our own governments for putting the sanctions on Russia in the first place.
Yeah.
Because their trade numbers are actually being hit.
And where are the Russian, the Russian politicians going to get their backsheesh from?
Yeah.
If they can't sell stuff to Europe.
Yeah.
They can't sell it to Russians. Russians ain't got no money, so they got to sell it to somebody. And it's got to be us. So you know, that's not going to happen. Yeah. So you know, all this stuff. That's Mr. Cameron and his merry men. You see, Cameron and his chums, they want a retirement fund. They want somewhere to go when they finish screwing up this country. They want to go and screw up the rest of Europe. They're not happy just with making this country a mess. Yeah, I mean, you know, people like Nicola Sturgeon and Alex Salmon. No, Alex Salmon loves it. He's joined some group of parliaments discussion group which meet in Brussels and some of the finest, or Strasbourg actually, in the finest restaurants. One called Au Crocodile, which I looked at the menu outside the door of it once. Was absolutely horrified and walked past. But that's where they all have their little rendezvous, their get-togethers. He loves all that sort of thing. He enjoys going to golf tournaments in America and all this sort of stuff. You know, they love all this stuff, grandstanding, because we're just little Scotland. But we want to walk tall with the greats of Europe, and that's what they want to do. That's what it's all about. It's about them having a jolly good time and getting a huge fat pension. And so it's like a House of Lords for Bolsheviks. Anyone else? Oh, come on. I'm sure the Black Isle's got some more questions. Questions of the Black Isle?
Well, I've actually got literature about to come to you, addressing the agricultural issues, David. So in the next few days, hopefully we'll be filled in on that one with Stuart Agnew and Edmund Lodge.
Yes.
And these people are very, they're very active in the European Parliament. Well, not so much Edmund, but certainly Stuart is. And I think they're well down the route of working things out.
Yes.
To keep things together.
After we leave. So UKIP are not just thinking about, and the EFDD group, are not just thinking about just leaving and that's it. We're thinking about what happens afterwards. How we organise it, how we keep stability, how we make sure that things improve. And also, so that our recidivist politicians, such as Mr. Cameron, get us out and immediately go back into something that's just about the European Union, but slightly less. But we don't. We want to be totally out of it and free to do what we want to do. And we need that freedom to do business with all other parts of the world which are dynamic.
One quick question. I have come across one reason some people don't say vote for UKIP or look at UKIP is because they've got no policies outside leaving Europe. It's a policy document.
You're wrong.
Yeah, I know that. I know.
You're massive of policy document.
No, it's
We
a
were
policy
the only people to have a fully costed manifesto overlooked by independent auditors. We're the only people at the general election to have that.
Can we download that somewhere?
You can indeed.
Yeah.
Who knows how to do that? Darryl, you're the expert on
It's
electronics.
probably still on the website.
It is.
Is it?
It is.
You can-
But if you give us your,
Yep.
make sure if you could all write down your names and emails, we'll send
Yeah.
stuff to you.
Please.
If you could, and we'll get it sent to you.
Yeah,
Just write
please.
what it is you
Yeah.
want.
That's right.
But
I would like to
the
meet someone.
manifesto, everybody in the BBC and the rest of it said it was fabulous because it was the only manifesto that's ever been costed, totally costed by independent reviewers.
Right.
And you know, we may not get elected, but we did get 4 million votes.
Yeah, I know.
Well, and it's a scandal. It's the same with the you know, with all those. So, and we didn't get one. We got one MP, but we got, what was it? The percentage of the vote on the end? Something huge amount. 15, yeah, I think it was about
14. It was
and we only
14%.
got one. And in Scotland, if you look at the disgrace of the last election, and this is why we must have proportional representation, which is ludicrous, that, you know, over half the population did not vote for the Scottish Nationals, and they got 3 MPs.
And,
You know, that is just a scandal.
and even the SNP agree with that because I stood
Even
on
the,
on
well, they've become a lot quieter since they got elected. I noticed them on the telly the other night. Oh, you don't talk much about that anymore. Oh, yeah, since it was on the Scottish debate on the Scottish, what do you call it, Scotland bill, and I don't know which MP it was. I think it was Alfredo Costa got up and said, you don't talk much about the change of the voting system. Oh no, now you're in, you're quite happy with the way it is. But it isn't fair. It's patently unfair and wrong and dangerous for democracy because, you know, I think even the SNP would say it's possibly dangerous for democracy.
The other thing that SNP are not, should be telling us right now is the prospect of the road tolling charges coming online, supposedly by, you should know, the Commissioner, woman
Yes, I
Commissioner.
know. I totally oppose it.
Well, that's going to create, if somebody goes to Inverness from the north of Scotland back, that could be a 300-mile round trip.
Yeah.
Yes, but
And
we
again,
have
the GPS is monitoring their journey. When they get home, they've got a bill that they travel so many kilometres. So what's it going to cost the British taxpayer to change all our signage in the first place, from mileage to kilometres? The cost is going to be astronomical.
Well, if you ask me, it simply isn't going to happen because there isn't the money to do it, and there will be a riot. So I don't
Well,
think it's going to happen.
they're already changing the signage on the railways
Well,
from
there might be, but
mileage to kilometres.
Well, I know, but it's going to be such a hoo-ha about it. I think they're going to be very hard pressed when there's going to be riots about that one.
You think
I
so?
think there's been riots with the poll tax. If they're going to charge money per mile, I can assure you there's going to be riots all over the country, and I'll be the first to be rioting, I can tell you. No, my brick will be the first through the window of the DVLA. Anyone else? Well, I'd like to thank you for coming, and I'd like our regional organiser, Kevin Newton, to just say a few words about the party and just about whatever he likes, really.
Thank you, David. Unexpected as it is. I think this is, the whole European issue is one that's very close to my heart because I was born in 1973, just after we joined. And as you go through life, you realise that we've been lied to for so long by our politicians. I mean, we alluded earlier on about the free trade area. We were told we were entering a free trade area. Actually, it wasn't even a free trade area, it was a customs union, which is a completely different technical thing. And that means that you do not have the ability to make trade deals with anybody else. And we've seen Cameron this week with the Indian Prime Minister parading him around London. The reality is, he cannot strike any sort of a deal with the Indian government concerning trade, because that has to be done now through the European Union. Again, we've seen the situation with Iceland, who have a trade deal with China. We can't, because the Italians object to it because of textiles, the textile industry in Italy. So we were sold a pub to begin with, and we've never had a say for 40 years. And this is our one and only chance. If we blow it this time, if we lose this referendum, that really will be it. The bureaucrats of Brussels will be on to fast forward. It really will be back to the debates over the euro again. It will be more integration. And every successive problem that comes along, the answer is always the same from the bureaucrats. It is always more union, not less. And so this really is a very, very important referendum. It's also one, and it's interesting if you look at different polls. I think, we had a question earlier about what if Scotland votes a different way. There have been polls that say, well, that actually isn't necessarily going to be the case. One of the things that and I speak to a lot of people, and knock on a lot of doors in politics as part of UKIP. The Scots are actually, we're not that much different to the English people. At the end of the day, the issues that concern us are pretty much the same sort of issues. And so I'm confident that if we can just get the message out there, if we can overcome some of the sort of the SNP, essentially the SNP lies. But I'm also very taken about, and I can't remember who said it many, many years ago, and he said that if you want to keep people in prison, you either need many, many thousands of guards, or you convince the people in that prison that they can't exist outside. And I think there's a profound concept within Europe that people would have, the British people, the Scottish people, believe that there is no future for us outside Europe. And that is absolute nonsense. And David said this in his speech right at the beginning. We are the 5th largest economy. We have the 6th largest military spending in the world. We have a permanent seat at the UN Security Council. We are a very, very powerful country with a population of 64 million. We will thrive if we can just unshackle ourselves from a sclerotic European Union, the only continent in the world, may I say, that is actually in recession and is not growing. If we can unshackle ourselves from them, then we will absolutely thrive. Obviously, the referendum is going to be the focus of the political debate probably for the next 12 months. We have, within sort of domestic politics, we've obviously got the Scottish elections, and UKIP will hopefully be playing a large role within that. And so I would just urge anybody who shares our ideals, anybody who thinks that what David had to say today strikes a chord, then come and talk to us. Come on board. We're a small party still in Scotland, but we are striking a chord with the issues that we're talking about. So please come and join our campaign, get on board. Thank you.
Can I just say, by the way, currently the Scottish elections, which are coming up very, very shortly to a polling booth near you, it looks like we might get at least 5 members of the Scottish Parliament. And believe you me, we will make such a ruckus in there, because all that is making stirring noises with our porridge sparkle. We are going to make such a ruckus in that chamber of numpties and nodding donkeys who all agree with each other. Oh, may I agree with the honourable lady even more than I agree with my honourable friend. You know, every one of the parties is exactly the same. And the Scottish Nationalists claim to be the Revolutionary Party. The Syriza Party, as the Revolutionary Party in Christians. Well, I'm sorry, the Syriza Party of Scotland is UKIP. We are going to give them we'll tell them what revolution is like. They'll be like having Che Guevara and what's his name, Fidel Castro at the gates of Havana in 1959. That's what it's going to be like for those characters. They're going to really regret it. And matter of fact, I believe some of them said that they'd rather close the Scottish Parliament down than let that man Coburn in through the gates. So there you go. So if we can get our 5 people in, I believe very much that we can make such a storm in Scottish politics. We'll drag the whole thing over. Because at the moment, everything's going in the same direction. And the Conservatives who are supposed to be doing something about it, only say, I'll have half a pint of what you're all having. And then it all just drifts further away. We will act as a sea anchor, we'll drive the whole thing back to a more sensible base. So even if you don't actually believe in everything we say, lend us your votes, because I can tell you right now, that will do an awful lot more good for the argument, political argument in Scotland, than the Conservatives or the Labour Party or the Liberals have ever done. We scare the wits out of the SNP, so give us your vote. Whatever your party, give us your vote. Or even your second vote, but give us your vote. Because if we can get in there, you will see such a storm. Nobody watches the Scottish parliamentary programme. It's like, oh God, it's like watching plants grow on Gardener's Question Time. And quite honestly, I want to take it from a second-rate TV programme to Downton Abbey. It's going to be the Downton Abbey of television. People will follow themselves to switch it on. And at the moment, the Americans want to switch on Question Time in Parliament from Westminster because they think it's entertainment. I'm going to make sure that Scottish Parliament's going to be top dog entertainment. The Whiskey Galore channel. So there we are. So make sure you please vote and tell all your friends as well. And please join the party. And if you could just write the names at the back of your what do you call it, your electrical email, whatever you want.
Which isn't for you, I would hasten to add, because it's
FTD. Yeah, it's the FTD group.
If you want to contact you, talk to one of the others.
You talk to somebody else, and but let's have, let's try and get as many people to get behind this cause, the FTD cause of getting out of Europe as possible.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.